Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all having an amazing day so far. So if you've been following my journey over the past year, you will know that I spent the last 9 months studying my first year at Yale University over in the United States. And as you can probably tell by my accent, I am Australian. Also, I just need to quickly apologise for two things. Number one, I am a little bit sick at the moment. I just have a cold, so that's why my voice is a little bit kind of nasally. And number two, if you can hear dogs barking in the background, I'm sorry about that as well. They're not mine, they're the neighbours, but they do seem to be going off at something at the moment. But anyway, in October last year, so October 2020, I left my home in Perth, Australia, and I flew to the US, had my first year of college, and then I've now returned home for summer break, and there are plenty of reasons for that, which I've explained in previous videos. But I have managed to return home from the US to Australia during COVID, and Australia's borders are closed at the moment, so I've been receiving a lot of questions about exactly how I was able to do that and what the process was, because there was quite a process. If you want to travel into Australia at the moment, it's quite a process. You have to fill out many forms, do many things, but that's basically what I'm going to explain in this video. So I'm going to explain the whole process and the timing and everything of how I got back to Australia during COVID when the borders are closed. Okay, so like I mentioned, Australia's borders are closed. However, there are exemptions. So there are some people who are allowed to get back into Australia from overseas, and the exemptions are, they're on a website which I'll link here and in the description box. So I need to say, all of the information in this video is just from my personal experience. It might not currently be accurate legally, I don't know, so definitely don't take my word for any of these things. I'm just going to be sharing the process that I went through, but things may be different now. I might have, I don't know, done the wrong thing or something, so please do your own research into this, but I really hope this video can kind of help you kind of start that research. So I'm reading directly from the health.gov.au website, and it says, travel into Australia, Australia's borders are closed. The only people who can travel into Australia are Australian citizens, which I am, permanent residents. I don't know, am I a resident of the US or Australia? I don't know, but I am a citizen. So citizens, permanent residents, immediate family members, travellers who have been in New Zealand for at least the 14 days before the date of departure, because Australia currently has a travel bubble with New Zealand. So those are the 4 groups of people who can enter Australia, and I'm sure there are more exemptions based on personal circumstances, but basically it's citizens, residents, immediate family members, and people from New Zealand. So although Australia's borders are closed, as an Australian citizen, I can, and if you are an Australian citizen, you also can come back to Australia, because as a citizen, I'm pretty sure it's there's some law, world law, if you're a citizen of a country, you are allowed to travel into your country at all times. You are allowed to do that, provided you can get a flight. Or provided you can get, you could come on a boat, I suppose. But provided you're able to physically get there, I think you're legally allowed to enter the country of which you are a citizen always. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that. So to get back into Australia, because the borders are closed, you need to apply for an exemption, and you are automatically exempt if you're one of those 4 groups. So as an Australian citizen, I was automatically exempt. So that's all good. I can come back into Australia. So if you are going through this process yourself, you will have to go and see if you're one of those 4 categories, then you're probably automatically exempt. If you're not, then you'll have to apply for an exemption, and it may or may not be approved. But I was automatically exempt, so I'm allowed to come back to Australia. So then I went on to book a flight into Australia, and this process was actually pretty straightforward. I didn't book the flight. I think my grandparents, my granddad, I love my granddad. He is absolutely amazing. He has kind of helped book and coordinate all of my travel to and from the US. Has been so helpful with this whole process. I'm so grateful that I have such caring grandparents. It's really, really special to me. But I think he was the one who kind of went online and booked the flight, but basically he just went on to Expedia or whatever website that you look for flights and find the cheapest ones and then book that one. So he did that, and I think he did it through a travel agent as well. But in terms of booking the flight, I have mentioned this in a previous video, but I've heard about all of the people who are stuck overseas, Australian citizens who are stuck overseas and can't get on a flight home because they keep getting bumped off flights for months and months. So I've heard all these horror stories about that, and that was really scaring me. But I managed, or my grandpa managed, to find a flight really easily. He said there was quite a lot of flights available. They are more expensive than usual, and some of them are ridiculously expensive. Some of them are like $15,000 for a one-way flight. Mine was nowhere near that. So it was a little bit more expensive than normal, but it wasn't ridiculously expensive, and we were able to book that flight. And my flight was with Singapore Airlines, and the flight went from JFK in New York to Singapore to Perth, Western Australia. And also, oh no, I'll get onto that later, but I'll just say it now. Okay, so when you go into Australia from anywhere internationally, no matter if you're fully vaccinated, which I am, you have to do 14 days mandatory hotel quarantine. As soon as you arrive, you are just taken from the airport to the hotel to quarantine for 14 days. They're very strict with that, and you have to quarantine at your first port of entry into Australia. So as lots of you will know, my parents are split up. My mum lives in Perth, my dad lives in Melbourne, and I haven't seen my dad for a really long time. So originally I was going to fly from the US into Melbourne, but the problem with that was that to get to Melbourne I had to fly from the US to somewhere and then into Sydney first, and then fly from Sydney to Melbourne. But because you have to quarantine at your first port of entry in Australia, I would have had to hotel quarantine for 14 days in Sydney. And then I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna have trouble getting from Sydney to Melbourne if there's like an outbreak of COVID anywhere there, which there actually has been. So I'm kind of glad that I flew straight into Perth. So I would recommend, if you are coming into Australia, try to get a flight like directly into the place in Australia where you want to go. Like, try not to go Sydney then Melbourne. If you're trying to go to Melbourne, try to find like a route where you can go directly into Melbourne if possible. Obviously if it's not possible or whatever, that's just like my suggestion. So yeah, do what you want, but yeah. So back to the story, my granddad booked this flight with Singapore Airlines, and I will say Singapore Airlines, sorry, the sun has gone behind a cloud, the lighting is going to change. But Singapore Airlines were fantastic, and I've actually heard from some people that there are some airlines who have been bumping people off flights, like they've been overbooking flights. Oh, because the other thing is, sorry, I keep thinking of things. Australia only lets in a certain number of people from like internationally each week, and each state has a certain cap on how many people they're letting in from internationally each week. And in Western Australia, they were only letting in, at the time I came in, 512 people. 512 people from all around the world each week. So if they hit that cap, like all of the other flights just don't go, I think. Like, you can't, because if 512 people have already come into Western Australia that week, then no more flights can come in, so everyone just gets bumped off their flights. And, or something like that, or maybe each flight is only allowed a certain number of people, to like, they're only allowed like 20 people. There was literally like, I think 20 people on my flight that came into Perth. It was deserted. Anyway, basically there are some flights that are notorious for overbooking their flights and then bumping off the lowest paying passengers. But Singapore Airlines apparently doesn't do that, but I've heard that, actually I can't remember what airlines do that, but apparently there are airlines that bump off people, but Singapore Airlines apparently is one that doesn't. So I would recommend Singapore Airlines. I thought they were excellent. Customer service was amazing. Everything was just really organized, especially when I went through Singapore. If you saw in my travel vlog, if you're thinking of making a similar trip to me, trying to get back into Australia, I would recommend watching my travel vlog, because you can kind of see the whole transit process through Singapore, which was quite interesting because we had to go into this specific area and we weren't allowed to leave that area and everything. And then you will see what it's like when you arrive in Australia, because you get like escorted by police to your hotel, and it's a pretty cool process. So we booked my flight, and then the next thing that you're going to need to do is look at the specific state that you are flying into, and what their like requirements for entry into that state are, because Australia as a country has like certain requirements and exemptions you need to have to get into the country, like being a citizen. And then each individual state also has a specific like list of things that you need to do, and a specific like state specific form that you have to fill out. So for, I think it's Western Australia and Tasmania, there's this like G pass. I keep calling it a G to G pass, but it's like a G to G pass. It stands for go to go, and basically it's just the pass that you need to fill out to get let back into Western Australia. And again, I'll link the website, I'll link all of the resources that I talk about in this video in the description box below. But you go onto the G2G like website and you have to create an account and fill out a form, and you have to tick like what type of person you are, and I think I was like a WA person returning or something, but there's all these different like police officer, immediate family member, all these different categories, and then you have to type out like a paragraph on why you're coming back into WA. And so I was like stressing. I was trying to get all of my reasons and like everything into this paragraph, and then you have to sign all these things like electronically, and then you so I was doing this. Oh, I remember I did this. I was on FaceTime with my mum while I was doing this, and it was at like 3 AM because I'd just come back from catching up with a couple of friends at their apartment. It was just the cross-country girls, and we just had dinner, and then just kind of like talking and playing games and stuff. And this was actually the only time, like my whole time at college, where I was out that late. But I got back at like 2:30 AM, which was 2:30 PM in the afternoon in Perth, and I was on FaceTime with my mum trying to like fill out this form and get it submitted. So I filled it out, submitted it, and I was expecting to hear back from them in like, you know, 5 to 8 business days or something. But one minute after I submitted my application, I got an email saying my travel into Western Australia had been approved and my G2G pass had been issued. So it was literally like, it was probably 30 seconds after I submitted the form I was told it was approved. So I'm pretty sure they didn't really read anything that I wrote. I think like if you are exempt to come back into Australia, then you're probably going to be okay to come back into Western Australia. And there's also the 14-day mandatory hotel quarantine. So I think they probably don't look at the forms too closely. It's more of just a formality. And actually, in a minute, I'm going to go into when all of these forms were checked throughout my travel process, like at the airports and stuff. But the GTG pass wasn't checked until you arrived at Perth airport. So a few people on my flight, like actually quite a few people on my flight, hadn't filled the pass out, and then they arrived at Perth airport and they had to fill it out when they were there. So yeah, anyway, I was organised and I filled out that pass, and then it was issued and it was all good. Okay, now we're getting close to flight time. So in like, once it gets to 72 hours or less before your flight, you will need to fill out this exemption to come into Australia travel form, which basically you have to tick that you haven't had any COVID symptoms, haven't been in contact with anyone. You have to put in your passport details, lots of different things. Again, I'll put a link down below to that form if I can find it. So you have to fill out that form, and then you get like a confirmation email that it's done. And I actually printed that out, so I would recommend printing that out. That's one thing you need. And then the other thing you need to do 72 hours or less before your flight is get a negative COVID test. And so I would print out your Australia like travel exemption form, and I would also print out your negative COVID test, because then once you get to the airport, so wherever you're originally leaving from, which for me was JFK in New York, when you go to check in for your flight, you're going to be asked to show these two things, and if you don't have one of these two things, you will not be allowed on the flight. So you must have filled out that form, and I think if you hadn't filled it out, they might let you fill it out at the airport, and you must have a negative COVID test 72 hours or less before departure. You must, otherwise you won't get on the plane. So those two things are really, really important. And so for me, those were both checked before. As I was checking in at JFK, they checked both of those, that I had both of those things. And I'm pretty sure it has to be a PCR test as well. It can't be a rapid test. So they check both of those before you can check in at the first place that you're leaving. So those were checked in New York, and then I flew to Singapore, was taken to a specific transit lounge, and nothing, like they don't need to check those forms again in Singapore because you're checked in all the way through, like to your final destination. And if they check it, you know, at JFK, then it's fine for, you know, all of your other transit destinations as well, provided you're not like going out into those countries. Like when you're transiting, you have to stay in a specific spot in the airport, but that was taken care of all in a very organized fashion by Singapore Airport. And then I flew from Singapore to Perth, and like I said, my G2G pass was checked upon arrival in Perth. And if you hadn't filled it out, then you could fill it out there. So that's probably the less important form. I would still say to fill it out prior to departure, but definitely you have to get the Australia one filled out and you have to get the COVID test. Those two things are crucial. And so then in terms of my actual trip, it went very, very smoothly. I knew the whole time up until I left JFK that there was a chance that I would be bumped off the flight, or that the flight wouldn't go because of the restrictions and of the numbers of people who can get into Australia. So I was very nervous that was going to happen, but it was just a chance that I had to take, and everything went very, very smoothly. Again, I'd recommend watching my travel vlog if you're interested in more of the process, because I talk more about this whole process at the end of that vlog as well. But yeah, everything went really smoothly, and then when I arrived in Perth, I was escorted by police to my hotel quarantine. Had to stay there for 14 days, and vlogs of that. There's one vlog of a day in my life in quarantine already up on my channel, and another vlog will be coming like as my next video. So lots of hotel quarantine vlogs and videos and information. I'm also going to film a hotel quarantine Q&A because a lot of you guys have questions about that. So if you do have any questions, leave them down below and I will do my best to answer them in that video. But yeah, that is how I got back into Australia. So I really hope this video can help you out if you're looking at making a similar trip in the near future. And if you're not, then I really hope it was like interesting. I think it's interesting to kind of learn about this process, because I'm guessing that most of you probably haven't been, or most of my regular subscribers probably haven't been and probably won't go through this process. So I don't know, maybe it's interesting to hear about. And if you do have any questions that I didn't address in the video, make sure to leave them in the comments down below and I will answer them to the best of my ability. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you've enjoyed it. If you found it helpful or interesting or just entertaining, please give it a thumbs up because that really helps my channel. And if you haven't already, I would love it if you could subscribe to my channel because I make quite a lot of videos, and you can go, I have like lots of videos on my channel already, so you can go check them out. And I'm trying to upload like at least twice a week at the moment. And also follow me on Instagram for like daily updates on my Instagram stories. And sometimes I post, I'm not very good at posting, but I do Instagram stories most days. So the Instagram is there, the TikTok is also there. You can go and follow me on there. I need to post more on TikTok. But even if you don't feel like doing any of that, just you being here and watching my video means so much to me. So I really hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much for being here. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and I will see you in my next video. Why do I always stumble on the final line? I will see you in my next video. Bye!